In this video, we're going to have a look at what the different databases are in Microsoft Azure together with the Azure Marketplace. Hello, and in this section, we'll be looking at databases, and we're going to start off with the Cosmos DB database. Now, the advantage of a Cosmos DB database, it's globally distributed, it's multi-model, there are 5 different models that you can use or APIs, and it's fully managed database. It's elastic, so it can scale very easily. You can scale throughput and storage. And it's very quick in terms of latency. We're talking milliseconds. Now, there are 5 different types of API. And they are core SQL, that uses JSON data, similar to what you have seen with the Azure Resource Manager templates. Cosmos DB for MongoDB, that also uses JSON. Use that if you have got an existing MongoDB. Cassandra, that uses column store data. Azure Table, that uses table data, key value data. And Gremlin or Graph, this uses relationship data. Now, you won't be required for the AZ900 exam to know all of the differences of these particular APIs. Use core SQL unless you've got a particular need. However, you will be required to be familiar with all of those names I just mentioned and what sort of data they store. Now, you can have a free database. It's a very low spec, 400 request units per second and 5 gigabytes of storage. It's enough to start off with. As you can see, it could save you $24 a month. So, having chosen everything here, so I'm going to choose an account name as well. I'm going to skip over everything else, and I'm going to create this database. You can see, average time 15 minutes. This is in the West US region. If I change it to a different region, so for instance UK South, we'll probably find it goes down to about 5 minutes. So we'll quickly create that. So now it's created, we can go to the resource. And one of the great things about Cosmos DB is that we can replicate the data globally. So I've put it into United Kingdom South, but with just clicks of the mouse, I can put it elsewhere. I can put it in East US, I can put it in Australia Central, and just click Save, and it's done. So Cosmos DB, while other datas have a strict number of columns, Cosmos DB doesn't. This is why it's called semi-structured data. It is globally distributed, so I can add additional regions very quickly. It's elastic. I can scale throughput and storage quickly. It's very quick in terms of latency. We're talking milliseconds. And there are 5 different APIs, and you need to know roughly that they allow for JSON data, key value data, column store data, and relationship data. And those APIs are called Core SQL, Table, Cassandra, MongoDB, and Graph. That's Cosmos DB. In this video, I'm going to talk about SQL Database. So this is a single SQL Server database. It is PaaS. So what you get is the latest version of SQL Server. It's for a single database. You can have an elastic pool, so you can have resources for multiple databases all grouped together. The advantages of this SQL database is that it has high availability. It allows you to have backups automated. And Microsoft handles most of the database management. As I say, it is always the latest version of this database. Now, that is good news if you want all of the latest features. The problem is, what if you don't? What if you want to go back to an earlier version? Then you wouldn't be using the SQL database, you'll be using a virtual machine with SQL Server on it. And that is IaaS. So when you are an IaaS, you are able to control what version of SQL Server you got. With this SQL database, this is a PaaS, so you'll always have the latest version. One other point, it doesn't include all 100% of the features of SQL Server on your computer. So there may be some features that it misses. So for that reason, you might want to consider other versions of SQL Database that we'll be talking about here. So Azure SQL Database, it is SQL Server in the cloud. And if we go to the pricing calculator and we have a look at an SQL database, the initial price might seem very high, but what you can also do is have a very minimal version. And look at that. You can have an SQL Server database in the cloud for about $5 a month. So that is SQL Database. And if you've got your own SQL Server and you want to migrate it to the cloud, then you can use the Azure Database Migration Service to get it there. In the previous video, we had a look at SQL Databases. And I said that it didn't have 100% of the features of SQL Server on-prem. Something that gets closer is SQL Managed Instances. So what this is a version of SQL Server on the cloud that is dedicated to you. Again, it's PaaS. It's even more compatible with SQL Server, much more compatible. And unlike SQL Database, here I'm able to create, say, 100 databases with the same managed instance. So I've got one service, but multiple databases. It's scalable, it's more compatible with SQL Server, and it's got high availability. And again, if you've got SQL Server on-prem, then you can migrate it to the cloud using Azure Database Migration Service, or you can do a backup and restore. So it's always the latest version of SQL, just like the SQL Managed Instance. So built-in high availability, disaster recovery, and automated backups. What do I mean by high availability? If I go to the surface level agreement and go to databases, then you will see that we're looking at 99.9949s. You can get that with SQL Database as well. The thing that really makes them different is the price. If we have a look at the database section for SQL Managed Instance, then we can see a typical price of $1,400. We can reduce that by reducing the number of cores to 700, but this is way bigger than if we have the $5 that we previously were able to get with SQL Database. Of course, we can reduce it further by having reserved capacity and having Azure Hybrid benefit. So SQL Managed Instance, it's a PaaS solution for multiple databases. In this video, we're going to have a look at Azure Database for MySQL. So this is largely for when you have an existing MySQL and you want to bring it up onto the web. Now this uses the LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So advantages of it are high availability, again a 99.99% SLA, rapid scaling as needed. You have enterprise-grade security and compliance, so sensitive data is protected at rest and in motion. You've got automatic backups, and you've got point-in-time restore for up to 35 days in the past. So that's MySQL. PostgreSQL, the advantages of that are fairly similar. So you've got high availability, you can scale up and down, you've got automatic backups and point-in-time restore up to 35 days in the past. But here is where it is different. You can have a single server, so that can be up to 16 terabytes of data, or you can have hyperscale Citus server group. So when you go beyond 16 terabytes, so you can see above 100 gigabytes, but beyond 16 terabytes. If you're just doing 16 terabytes, then you may consider a single server. Another advantage of the hyperscale Citus server group is that it allows for high performance horizontal scaling. So we can have not just one server, but multiple servers doing your database work. So PostgreSQL, and MySQL, they both have high availability, they can both scale, they can automatic backups, and they've got point-in-time restore. To finish off this section about core resources available in Azure, I want to have a look at the Azure Marketplace. Now, the Marketplace is not actually a service, but you will see it if you search for it. But a much easier way of finding it is by clicking on Create a Resource. This takes you to the Marketplace. Now, it might not look a lot, but there are some 17,000 different certified apps and services here. So you can deploy them from the Marketplace, and because it's all on Azure, you get a single bill for all of Microsoft and third-party solutions. So it describes itself as accelerate the pace of development with thousands of certified apps. So these services are all certified using the Microsoft Azure Certified Program to show their compatibility with Azure. These services aren't just from Microsoft, they are from third parties. These services, some of them can be free, and some of them are paid for. And as you can see, quite a lot of them are preview as well. So if you want something different to any of the main services that you've been looking at, you could do a lot worse than have a look in the Azure Marketplace. And to get there, all you need to do is click the plus. Coming up, we'll have a little quiz to see how much you have learned in this video. So question 1. Which of these databases can be used to store semi-structured data? So Azure SQL Database, Azure Database for MySQL, SQL Managed Instance, or Cosmos DB. So semi-structured database, that's data with no fixed schema. And the best answer is Cosmos DB. So you could store things like JSON data in Azure SQL Database, but the Cosmos DB database is designed for data including semi-structured data. The next question. Which of these will allow you to migrate a database to Azure? Is it the Azure DB Exporting Service, the Azure Data Transfer Service, or the Azure Database Migration Service? And the answer is the Azure Database Migration Service. Question 3. Which of these is not a deployment method for Azure Database for PostgreSQL? Is it single server, container, hyperscale, or Citus? The answer is a container. You can use single server or you can use hyperscale, Citus. Final question. Core SQL, MongoDB, Cassandra, Azure Table, and Gremlin or Graph are types of what? Containers, virtual machines, machine learning tools, or database APIs? And the answer is they're all different type of Cosmos DB database APIs. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, then why not give it a like? And why not subscribe and click that bell? That way you'll be notified of new videos. If you enjoyed this video and want more, then there is a playlist on the end screen which contains more about Azure services. I'm Philip Burton of idodata.com. Thanks for watching and keep learning.